We're here, we're queer, and we love the Lord. That's right, you're listening to Coming Out Christian, a podcast about life at the intersection of queer identity and Christian faith. This fun, faithful, and sometimes irreverent podcast is a production of Love Boldly, an Ohio-based nonprofit creating spaces where LGBTQIA+ people can flourish in Christianity. I'm one of your hosts, Siobhan Boyd-Nelson, and my co-host is the Reverend Dr. Ben Huelskamp, Executive Director of Love Boldly. So join us, and let's find out who's coming out today. It's Ben. Look at you.
Hey, Siobhan, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Ben?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Wonderful.
Again, like we were saying before we started recording, we're recording into the future. So here's to hoping that it is a wonderful spring May day when this episode airs, and we're not staring down the possible 12 inches of snow that we are staring down at the moment. I'm hopeful for warm, nice spring days.
Yeah, I think it's our first snowpocalypse of 2026.
I believe so.
Is headed for us. So if you're thinking in your heads, oh yeah, that was a big one, or oh yeah, they definitely tricked us on that one. We got like 2 inches. We don't know yet. It's still Schrodinger's cat over here. But I got a question for you, Ben, since we are pretty close to the holidays still. Is there a gift? Did you get like an amazing gift for the holidays, or what was your favorite one that you got this year?
So like I usually do, I'm going to answer that question two ways.
Love it.
Actual gifts. I mean, this probably speaks more to where I am in my life and whatnot. But I got a set of new plush, wonderful towels. And I realize, particularly for any of our younger listeners, that probably doesn't seem all that cool, but it was a nice, lovely winter gift, very practical, but also just really nice and kind of comforting. The other gift, and this isn't really a gift per se, but I'm going to use it, and our listeners will probably have already heard me say this on other episodes. But my newest nephew, Henry, was born on January 16th, which is a lovely gift. I am nothing if not a doting uncle. So that was a nice, again, quote unquote, gift after the holidays.
Oh, yay, Henry. Welcome, Henry. And yes, a new baby is such a wonderful gift. And yeah, you get to count. January 16th, that's still holiday time.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I am with you on those towels. Oh, a good towel. It really can just change your whole day. We're thinking about getting a towel warmer. I'm not sure that we're there yet, but we are inching close to the towel warmer. And I would say similar to you, at least in the, I guess, housewares type of part of the store. My favorite gift, or the big gift that my wife got me this year, is a steamer. It's a standing steamer, garment steamer.
Nice.
I feel so fancy, Ben. First of all, I am a married woman that loves a household appliance for a Christmas gift. I'm here to say it. You can call me a trad wife all you want, but I love a good household appliance as a Christmas gift. And this year, my garment steamer, I'm like, ooh, I'm fancy now. Yes, I am. I've got a garment steamer and a label maker. So I really came up in 2025. Those are my two big things that I acquired.
Love it.
Well, I hope that our guest also had an amazing holiday and perhaps got a fun housewares or something fun for the home as well for his holiday. And our amazing guest today is Dale Lykins. After serving more than 30 years as a United Methodist pastor, Dale realized the institutional church he had given so much to was grounded more in perpetuating the institution than actually meeting the challenges of people's lives and questions in a modern world. In 2019, Dale founded an inclusive and affirming community, The Open Table, where people are accepted no matter who they are or where they are on their life journey. Dale also came out as gay during this time. Dale also pursues his mission of creating authentic community and connection through coaching, writing, and his podcast, Hear It From Me. Dale is a native Ohioan and a graduate of The Ohio State University and Asbury Theological Seminary. He and his wife, Shelley, are in a mixed orientation marriage. They live in the Cincinnati, Ohio area and have a son, a daughter, and two grandsons. How fun! Grandkids are the best. Dale is ordained with the Federation of Christian Ministries. Welcome, Dale. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, welcome, Ben and Siobhan. I appreciate the invitation.
Wonderful. We are going to start off with the first question we ask all of our guests, and that is, what is your testimony? What is your story at the intersection of queer identity and Christian faith?
Well, first, I'm going to preface this by saying I kind of make my living writing and talking. So, so this is going
That's
to be
fair.
a little bit of a journey. So,
Okay.
so I'm going to tell you, like, hopefully not the whole story, but a lot. I grew up deeply immersed in Christianity, especially evangelical Christianity, from my early teens until early adulthood, when I started to kind of broaden my experiences. And then with the institutional church as a pastor, like you just said, I was ordained in 1989. So, and so ministry, as it's called, it was a big part of my life. But faith in those years wasn't just something that I believed. It shaped my identity, my relationships, my sense of purpose. It was like everything. For many years, I was certain that I knew who God was, how faith was supposed to work. But over time, the answers that kind of felt very solid and certain began to soften and fracture even. Life experiences, my growing awareness of how faith can be used to harm, really forced me to ask harder questions. And then, around the age of 55 is when I finally admitted to myself the possibility that in the evangelical church I grew up in and in my family situation, never thought was even a possibility to say or to believe, that I was gay. This struggle all my life was not a struggle. It's just who I am. So I eventually, through all of that, I'm jumping, but I found myself deconstructing the very beliefs that kind of once grounded me. And especially during the pandemic, like 2020 and on, I just had all this time to read beyond what I used to, and really, start to question a lot of that. So today my faith is quieter, more spacious, far less certain, but also I feel more honest. I trust questions more than answers. I trust love more than doctrine, and belonging more than belief. So I don't see faith as something to defend, but as something to live. And I do that a lot. Of that for me is creating community with those who have been pushed to the margins. So as a matter of fact, at this point in my life, I'll just say it, and then you can, we can just explore all of that wherever you want. I really wouldn't even call myself a Christian.
Oh, okay. Okay. And that is not something that we haven't heard.
Okay.
And it's
Good.
something that we encounter, especially with the work with Love Boldly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we're very intentional about our language, about creating spaces where LGBTQIA plus people can thrive in faith.
Mm-hmm.
And creating faith spaces, and that they need not necessarily be Christian, but we are serving folks who have a predominantly Christian background, because that
Yes.
has
Yes.
shaped so much of our
Mm-hmm.
narrative in this culture,
Mm-hmm.
in this space,
Yeah,
right?
and that's true for, you mentioned the Open Table. I founded after leaving the United Methodist Church in 2019, and in that community too, there are people all over. I mean, we have people who are
Mm-hmm.
all in for Jesus, and we have people who cannot consider saying the word God. So,
Yeah.
we try to create space for all of that and
Mm-hmm.
broaden our language, not to deny something, but to make space for more
Yeah.
thoughts, and people can kind of fill in whatever they need to. And so, and even there, you would hear some of the stories, like Jesus stories, or we might use some traditional kind of Bible stories in our time together. But again, broadening the way we approach them and talk
Hmm.
about them, and even the words, like, we do what we call table words.
Hmm.
What people would know, communion. We do that every time we get together for a gathering. And it was interesting when that shifted for us, which is around 2021 or two. We started gathering a lot of people who were looking for a place that was safe for their questions. I had
Yes,
so
yes.
many emails that would say, I'm looking for an affirming place to be. That's very important to me. I'm also leaving my evangelical faith and church, and
Hmm.
I think you all would be a safe space to explore that. And so it changed us because we hadn't even
Hmm.
thought about that so much. And
Okay.
then, so anyway, I can talk about that all the time. So I will stop and let you redirect whatever.
No, that's a wonderful place to go. And I want to talk more about this time when you left the Methodist Church, because I
Mhm.
know that
Okay.
2019 was a
Uh-huh.
pretty big year in the Methodist Church to begin with.
It was.
Was that part of your
Mhm.
thinking and part of your leaving the church?
It was, Saban, but it wasn't the only thing.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't even. There were two things, and I wouldn't put one above the other. They were kind of
Okay.
equal. So I had been kind of disillusioned with the church, the institution of the church, and the structure and hierarchy, and the way it was engaging, with us in local churches for about
Hmm.
10 years before I left. And so I also knew I had decided in 2019 that if the general conference, which you're referring to at that time, gathering in February, March, that week that spanned the end of one and the beginning of the other, that's about the time
Hmm.
frame, early early spring. I knew I had decided that if they did not change the language that was exclusionary in the rule book, in the book of discipline, that I was leaving. But I
Okay.
didn't have a time frame on that. I knew,
Okay.
where I was. I wanted to wrap that up kind of in a good way, and I still think I did, but it was way quicker than I expected. So, but there were other situations that I won't go into unless you want, but that were causing conflict in that local church. A lot of it came from the gays were coming. And so we were taking
Okay.
in LGBTQ members, and it was obviously, like, it just, and there's just the fact that the denomination was having the general conference. There were more organized conversations about what that was going to mean and what was possible, and that just heightened people who were not affirming it, just, and more conservative, their fears. And
Hmm.
so all of that started bubbling up and boiling over, and the way that was handled by the person above me in the hierarchy and others, just, I said, that's it. I don't want
Okay.
to live in this system anymore that is shaming. That's the way I experience it, and that's the way I've just yesterday, heard another story from a United Methodist I said the same thing to. I said, you're in such a shaming system,
Hmm.
and is punitive, and just so many things. And I just thought, I want to get out of this.
Yeah, that
So I
makes
did.
total, yeah, yeah,
30
absolutely,
years. It
absolutely.
was right at 30 years. And I did not retire. I
Okay.
like to make that clear. I gave them my ordination back.
Oh,
I walked
wow.
away. So
Wow.
yeah, I surrendered my credentials in that church. So.
That's a very big step, but it feels like a very
Hmm.
much a deconstruction step where you said, all right, I do, in order to um not be living within that, you called it a system, which I my ears perk up when
Yes.
you say that system. You wanted to completely remove yourself from the system, so not even be a retired member of it,
Right.
but to completely remove yourself
Mm-mm.
from it. Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't want as a go ahead. Yeah.
Go, please go ahead.
Oh, okay. That I didn't want, even as a retired elder, I would have been subject to the rules of the discipline, which
Oh.
2019's General Conference did not change. They'd
Mm-hmm.
actually kind of doubled down and tightened the screws, and that was a, that I was like, I'm not. I want to move into whatever time I have left doing what I'm going to be doing. I want to be free to do it the way that I feel I should. I want to marry who I want to marry. I want to be, open about that. I want to welcome people, and be broad in that expression. So,
Yeah.
and I have lots of friends and people who are, still part of that, the United Methodist Church and others and clergy, and I don't judge it. I'm not judging anybody in their choices, but
Yeah.
I have pretty harsh words to say about the institution of the Christian church in general. So, so
And it sounds from your testimony and the way you framed it, and please correct me
Mhm.
if I'm wrong, that that stems from both your own experience as well as the experiences of others.
Mhm.
Can you speak to that, how much your experience, because you came out, was it before or after leaving the Methodist Church that you came out?
Well, yes, that's important. Thank you for bringing
Yeah.
that up. I hadn't thought about it. Well, my coming out was in steps. So it
Okay.
was yes and yes.
Mm-hmm.
So it was 2018 was a pivotal year for me because I took about a 5 week, 5 or 6 week renewal leave. And I was very intentional about how I was spending my time and visiting mentors around the country and reading certain books and really processing what do I want to be about.
Mm-hmm.
And that really helped me clarify some things. And I also, around that time, started counseling again and was in voice therapy, which was, I write about that in my book. I won't go into all that now, but it was a hugely impactful experience to realize that I had um, held so much trauma in my body that
Mm.
I could not relax myself enough to do like I had actually ruined my voice. I mean, that
Okay.
and so doing the therapy where they're like, just relax your shoulders. I'm like, I don't know what that's like, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that whole thing just sent me into a lot of places. So, okay. So all of that came to me coming out to myself
Okay.
in July 2018, and to my wife who was sitting near me. We were watching a movie, and I just was Love Simon, and I was like, by the end of it, I just was in tears, and I realized I'm gay. I'm gay,
Mm.
and it's not that she didn't know my righteous struggle against my attractions and my identity or whatever. I just never, ever thought I was gay. I just thought something was missing, something I could fill, something I could counsel away, and then
Okay.
it would be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds so odd to some people, but seriously, it was not in my brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though, I mean, from the earliest, I knew I was kind of intrigued by boys and guys, but
Right.
it
Right.
just, it was just this, this burden upon me. So anyway, so Siobhan, I came out in 2018 to me and my wife. We have 35 years at that point, and the grandkids and all. And we told just a couple people, and I'm serious about that, like maybe 3.
Okay.
And then told the rest of my kids and my mom in maybe 9 months later, I don't know, May of 2019.
Okay.
And then left the UMC in June. I didn't come out and make it Facebook official until
Mm-hmm.
December of 2019. So I was already gone from the UMC
Got
and
it.
heavily into the open table. Okay,
Okay.
so there's not the whole story of it. It's a lot more than you bargained for, but it's not as simple. It's not so linear. It's not
Right.
like I can say, well, there's that and that. So
Well, I don't think any of our lives really are
Yeah, no.
linear, and it sounds like you were having some awakenings, and I definitely
Hmm.
relate to the idea of there being something wrong with the physical body that awakens you to there being something wrong with mentally or with the spirit, and I think that that's something that I've experienced, and I think it's something that many people experience because
Hmm.
we carry so much of that trauma within our bodies. And
Yeah.
is that related to your memoir? Your memoir is called Hush?
Hush Child.
Hush Child. Okay.
Yeah, with a
Yes.
comma.
Okay.
Yes. And yeah.
There it is. Ben's holding up a
Ben
copy
is
of it.
holding up a copy. It is because so it's about that journey, not about, but big part of it is that voice therapy journey, because that is also when I realized that the trauma I'm holding on in my body too is sexual abuse as a child.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so that hence the going back to counseling and like just continuing to, explore that and understand it and, heal whatever I can for myself.
Hmm.
Yeah, that is that all that story and the details as much as I share are in that my memoir. Yeah.
Yeah. And to go from needing voice therapy and just having this trauma in your voice to now having a podcast. I mean, that just
Yes.
it speaks to healing. And so can
Hmm.
you talk a little
Hmm.
bit about that healing and what that healing journey's been like?
Hmm. Wow. Yes, I can. In a minute. So, I mean, I was a person who always talked for, I mean, I was a pastor for pity's sakes for,
Yeah, yeah.
in the institutional church 30 years. By my last congregation I was pastoring, there were 3 worship services of Sunday. So I talked and talked,
Mm,
it's a big place. So I was leading staff and meetings and talking and talking. Um, what I discovered was that I talked as if I had to convince the world I had something to say
mm.
and that they
Okay.
needed to listen. And that was exhausting.
Yeah.
I did not know how exhausting it was because I
Hmm.
didn't know about it, but now
Right.
like, and got to a place where, and as a matter of fact, I had some old videos of sermons from that local church during the one that I left last. Um, and you can see the difference, or hear and see the difference if you look at a before and after sermon.
Okay.
There's, it's like this centeredness, feeling grounding from like where my feet are standing,
Mm,
in my being, instead of, and confident in a sense in what I'm saying
hmm.
because it's my story and it's what I believe and think, and therefore, shall I say, worthy of being told.
Okay.
And so, that's what I carried into the future, into, the way that I attempt to be. I mean, again, not a linear story. So it goes
Yeah.
back and forth and I have to remind myself of that. But yeah, so now I am, when I talk, I share so much more of my own story of, just not worrying about, whether I'm doing too much of that or being, that kind of those old, I call them old previous ways that I was taught, like you had to fake it. You had to be on, you were on
Hmm.
Sunday. If you were, I heard a person tell me one time, one mentor of mine was like, told a whole group of people, preachers, if you, had a rough, you're exhausted Sunday morning, you had better drink a bunch of Mountain Dew and just do it and just, you know, put on the show is what I might say
Wow.
now.
Okay.
And so, where now I'm free to say, I am tired.
Yeah.
The world is exhausting.
Yeah.
And it just invites people to do the same. And then, Siobhan, imagine community can happen and authenticity can have a better place to grow and to break out. And so, um, So yes, so now, so I bring that to my podcast too. It's called Hear It From Me. And just uh, I enjoy it so much, and I was talking a little earlier, I'm a bit of an introvert too, but it's not that I don't like people or don't like talking or talking
Hmm.
with people, but and I just kind of embrace that now, that when it's over, like when this is over, I will be done. Like I
Yes.
need to go, like, do something that has nothing to do with engaging others, so
Yes. Yes.
for a moment.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, I like where you're going with this because my next question was going to be what is different about the open table? Because you were
Mm,
leaving an institution
okay.
that you were disappointed in, I think, or angry with,
Mhm,
perhaps even, and dissatisfied with.
mm,
You were
mhm,
dissatisfied with the church institution, and you created an alternative space. And I just want to, I
mhm,
think, go a little bit deeper, and you have started that already, into what that
mhm.
alternative space looks and feels like, and what your thinking was going into building that.
Yeah. Well, that too is not, a linear
Hmm.
story, but I'll try to narrow that down. It's been 6 years
Wow.
that we've been together. Yeah, the Open Table began. So I left the UMC the 30th of June, 2019, and the second Sunday after that in July we started meeting in the Open Table. Um, so we had the just very little structure. I mean, we're structured. We have some things that we do.
Hmm.
There's a pattern that we live, but things are much more open and free of structural expectations.
Okay.
I don't, it doesn't, one of the things is so funny. It's a small thing, but for me, it's a big thing is, counting people all the time, like making
Hmm.
that like a measurement of something,
Yes.
like
Yes.
attendance and money, like
Yes.
with the institution. I mean, I had someone that was, a district superintendent of mine one time that said to me, "We're looking for people and money." I mean, he just put it out there,
Wow.
pull the curtain back.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, well, that just added to, I don't want to be about that anymore.
Right.
So, we really focus on the community. It is not about the show.
Hmm.
We don't put one on. That may sound like a judgy word to use, but I think it's just one that I connect with
Hmm.
because I was part of doing that, and to me, it was. I mean, I had to do it right. I had to be on, like I've talked about. Everybody else did. They had to hit their mark, or someone's going to like not come back, or and it's just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
so just free yourself from all of that expectation. I mean, we have had people come and go, I miss the big band and the music and the fog, so they're going back. It's
Hmm.
okay, good.
Hmm.
And that's another thing too. It's like, okay, if there are 10 of us or 3 or whatever, we are a community.
Yeah.
Now there are more than that, but I'm just saying that it's not based on how many of us gather in any one place at any one time.
Okay.
So, and when we do, we don't do the same thing all the time. So we
Hmm.
have a monthly pattern that uh, reminds us that our lives, old language would say our faith is lived in the world, but now I would just say just our lives, just live your life, and you're doing it right. Well,
Hmm.
there's no right or wrong, but you got it. But
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so it's about being intentionally connected with your own life, with the people around you, with the world, wherever you are. So, there are people that are part of the Open Tables community. I am serious. It'll be 2 years. I'll not even see them, but we'll connect. And we also put resources out to help people feel, be connected, even if they're not like a part of what we do all the time on a regular
Right.
basis. And then for something, they'll just come in.
Yeah.
They'll be there. I'm
Yeah.
like, because they're interested,
Yeah.
in what we're doing, but they don't consider themselves not part of us. And we don't check who's missed in 3 weeks and then, have
Hmm.
someone follow up with them and say, where are you? Not that we don't care where people are, you understand, but I'm talking
Yes.
about a system or a structure. It's, we try to be a bit more authentic than that. So that monthly structure or pattern, I'm sorry, I didn't say structure, monthly pattern, first of the month, we meet in smaller groups that just, where we can encourage each other on that, intentional connection, daily life,
Mm-hmm.
in a more personal way. And then the second and third weeks, we do gatherings of the whole community, which might look like worship to a lot of folks.
Okay.
We do have music, and and there are meditation times, sometimes prayers,
Mm-hmm.
lots of conversation, breaking up and talking to people and sharing together.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last week of the month, we do what we call loving action. So that's this week actually, and so we were helping. We have a partnership with a local homeless shelter that we are providing meal for, and so we'll be doing that. So although we may not be meeting together on Sunday because of the snow that we were talking
Right.
about earlier,
Right.
but we'll just pivot to Zoom or do something where we can at least say hi and be community together face to face as much as possible. So I guess the difference would be in the expectations, the definitions,
Mm-hmm.
the fewer rules, the dogma. There's no dogma.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. It's like, whatever. It's okay.
Okay. Yeah.
There's one non-negotiable, and that is people need to be know that we are an affirming with no apology for that,
Mm-hmm.
and we keep a safe space for lots of opinions. So if you can do that, then
Then you're welcome.
you're welcome.
Wow. Okay. And that sounds, and I've been in spaces, having been in spaces that were very much about a show or about hitting a mark
Mm-hmm.
and doing things just right, because the last time we didn't do it just right, we got so many complaints, or this person,
Yes,
this many people left the last time
kind
we
of that
didn't.
consumer church mentality. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes, that almost like it like creating content. It was almost that
Mm-hmm.
the church itself was content to be consumed, and we
Yes.
therefore were actors or players on a stage
Mm-hmm.
instead of actually showing up for a community activity, whatever that is. If that's worship, if
Mm-hmm.
that's, the service that you're talking about, that authenticity, I think, is very important, and something that a lot of us are missing in our church
Mm-hmm.
spaces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
why some people give up on church, honestly.
Yes, I do too. And people are
Yeah.
like, I just wish they could find a way to that, or someone who would help them redefine what they mean by that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, it's like, I mean, even we try not to use the word, but not because I don't, I think that uh, there are different ways to express church, and
Mm-hmm.
they're valid, but they're not the first thing that come to people's mind. And so all the negativity comes. I've had people who are part of the open table say to me before, they're like, I was telling my friend that they should come to my church. And then I'm like, but then I spent 5 minutes saying, but we're not like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we just started like cleaning the word out of most things so that we can let people again broaden whatever they need to feel. There are people who call us church, who are part
Mm-hmm.
of us, and then there are people who are adamant that they wouldn't want to, to be in any space that feels like that. So
Right. Right.
so anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
yes. So
Yeah. Okay. Now, I wanted to ask you a question, because there was a phrase in your bio that I understand, but I want to make sure that our listeners understand, and that was mixed orientation marriage. Could you explain that to for our listeners who haven't heard it before?
I can, and I was not surprised that's what you were going to say. um, yeah, so mixed orientation marriages are where one of the two partners, typically two, are are well, how do I want to say that? Usually one is straight and one is not, but it could be just not the same. They do not share the same sexual orientation.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, and a lot of the connections that we have in those spaces where folks meet each other that are in that situation, It's either, a man or woman who have come out, husband or wife, and they, after, being married for a period of time, and that varies, of course.
Mm-hmm.
For my wife and I, it was a long time,
Yeah.
and that happens too. And then they decide to make that work in ways that they agree upon. So they
Mm-hmm.
stay married. It's not for everybody, when that happens. And man, there are lots of folks and folks that I coach, and mostly men who have come out to wives.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Everyone, and so I wouldn't want to make that a blanket statement, but in my experience, a lot have been from evangelical Christian backgrounds. And so they just, again, like I mentioned earlier, myself in my story, they just didn't claim, and they have different
Yeah.
experiences. Some people knew and they're hiding it.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, like myself, they weren't. So people are like, so you were hiding? No, I didn't believe I was gay.
Right. Right.
And that may sound strange, but I did not believe I was gay. And anyway, so those folks often will stay together. Like
Mm-hmm.
my wife and I decided that it wasn't like that same, I don't even know how long it was before she was like, so, it wasn't very long, like
Yeah.
minutes. She's like, so what's that mean? And I'm like, I don't, and we were like, I said, I'm not going anywhere,
Okay.
right now. And we talked about, we loved each other. We loved our life. We'd been together 35 years. We liked our family. And it's not that you would lose all of that, but we liked the way it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided to stay married.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now, and I will say, and another thing that happens, and I'll just throw this in. I was asked this yesterday. They're like, how do you make that work? And I said, well, they said, can I ask you a personal question? And I said, well, I get asked that some. Gosh, I'm not sure. It was pretty early on too. It was my wife who started searching online. I think her first search was, my husband just came out, now what, or something.
Okay.
And discovered people in mixed orientation marriages. We didn't know
Mm-hmm.
there was a name, and that there were lots of other people. And I mean, like, lots of other people. And
Right.
so started entering, chat, groups and email groups and online groups, and ran across a story of a woman whose husband, who had come out to her as gay, they were an older couple, that he had a boyfriend, and so my wife, we talked about that. She told me, so I want this for you and I want this for us. So I've had a partner, we now call, although I like saying boyfriend because I never got to do that as a,
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
teen or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But it's been 6 years
Wow.
that we've been together. So he's part of my family. He's here at Christmas. He's in family chats, and kids love him. And
Mm-hmm.
so he's at the grandkids baseball games, although he will not be called grandpa. He's like, he's younger than I am, so he doesn't want to
Okay. Got
do
it.
that. So,
And that's beautiful that you've made that work. And I think for folks who have successful marriages and like being married, I've learned that not everybody likes being married. But for folks who like being married, I think I can absolutely understand. No. The marriage itself, the relationship between you and I, is a thing that I enjoy, and what we've built together, I want to preserve. And I also need to acknowledge my identity, this part of who I am.
yes,
Yeah.
right, and yes, and it's just, which we do. There's lots of ways that I do that, and we do that together. And tomorrow night, actually, he will be here, and we're all three going, which happens a lot. We're going out to a Pops concert, where they're playing Dolly Parton music. But anyways,
Yes.
but anyway, and even the open mixed orientation marriage is not a decision that everyone makes or can. I won't want to use the word handle, because I don't want that to sound judgy, but
Right.
they know they're not in a place that they could do that.
Right.
And it just depends on, again, I've coached, men who are in the situation who just many do not have the supportive spouse that I do, who's
Right,
just
right.
like, doesn't hide that, or, and shares it. And, and I would not want people to think that that was some rosy skip along, journey to where we are now,
Okay.
which is what, 7 years later, almost
Mm-hmm.
8, um, from when I first told her. I mean, it's been really hard at times,
Oh, yeah.
uh, lots of times,
Yeah.
and but we're just in a, it's just settled into a really good place. Um, I get, I'll go ahead and ask a question. I'll say I get asked a lot,
Okay.
what was the, I mean, what's the hardest part about being in a mixed orientation marriage? And I think this is important, at least for our story. It's all, our answer is quick and always the same. Um, it is working on our own shit.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah.
Because like my wife says, there's nothing like bringing all the trauma in your life up, but then the uncertainty of when your husband says, "Hey, I'm gay,"
Yeah.
after 35 years. Um, and that's the same for both of us. We did not understand how our trauma responses just fed each other's perfectly in so
Okay.
many unhealthy ways. And
Yeah.
so as we separate that, make that better, where we're not triggering each other as much as
Mm-hmm.
possible, or if we get that way, go, okay, it's okay, and working through it. And then that just gets, because you practice it and you live, that just get less and less and less.
Right.
So it was just, her fear of being left out and of being
Yes.
left,
Yeah.
and, which she didn't know was so strong in her life. And my, experience of, being manipulated and abused. And, so it's just the way that what she might say or do, and the way she shuts down at times, shuts me down. And then, so all those things, those were the hardest parts. I
Okay.
mean, and during the early counseling together and separately with the same person, by the way, during those earliest years, I mean, there were many times that she would get in my face and say, "None of this is because you are gay."
Ah, okay. Okay.
Because I would think, "Oh, look what I've done," or, "She's upset because I'm gay," what, and it's like,
Right.
that is not, so it takes work, and it took a lot at the beginning. And anyway, but
Well, that's just next level marriaging, I think.
it is,
You're
and I don't
you
know how many
really
people
put in the
get there.
work. No, I think
Yes,
very
you just
few
get
people
thrown
get
into it.
there. Yes, and so the
It's
idea that,
scary.
yeah, you're each working on your own shit and being,
Yes,
particularly more self-aware than we tend to be, particularly in our own homes with the people that we love the most. And then you've got
yes,
a third person in this as
right,
well,
yes,
which then just, becomes exponential at that point.
right, right.
But I hear, um, again, healing and growth and progress
Mhm.
in that story. It is not,
Yes.
and not that any of those concepts are linear, should be, can be, but they still exist in this nonlinear story.
Mhm. Well, they do. And Siobhan, I know I one that started it, my story is not linear, and it's like, well, of course it's not. We're all that way, but that is so new to me. Like,
Mm,
one of the things I did, which I didn't realize, of course,
mm-hmm.
as a survivor of abuse, was when things get a bit messy,
Okay.
my body, my brain starts to go, "You're not going to be safe."
Ah,
So it was a big deal for me to go, okay, I'm a messy human being,
yeah.
and so is everyone else.
Uh-huh.
And human life and relationships are just messy, and they go
Right.
all over the place, because that was scary. And so also that my faith, which was so nailed down and certain, it
Mm-hmm.
fit me so like what I needed so much.
Mm-hmm.
And then those things started to come loose in a, what I can look back and say, in a glorious way,
Right.
so
Right. Yeah. No, that's
yeah.
that makes sense. And I think when you were talking about the open table and the idea of asking questions, I think
Hmm.
that you have to have a certain level of comfort with messiness and not having the answer and not
Hmm.
knowing the answer. Um, and
Yeah.
and and being in relationship with a God that may not tell you the answer, even, right? Like that might
Yes.
actually be the point and you might not get to know. And that's,
Hmm.
again, next level faith, right? That's a different way of relating to God in a way that isn't,
Hmm.
I have this relationship with God because I know exactly what God's thinking, what God's going to do, and how I fit into this story, to where you
Hmm.
are now, where
Yes.
you encourage people to ask questions and to live in
Mhm.
the fullness of their messiness.
Yes, absolutely. We do that intentionally. We say those words even. Yes.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. That is
Yeah.
beautiful. Wow.
Yeah.
Dale, this has been an amazing conversation. Ben, I have absolutely taken up all of Dale's time. Is there anything that you wanted to ask?
Nope. I was going to go to the mixed orientation marriage question myself. So you got there before me, and that's perfectly fine. Um, but no, I'm
Hmm.
good. Thank you so much.
Well, Dale, I want to say thank you because I think this has been a really beautiful story of deconstruction, and really
Hmm.
deconstruction in the moment, kind of
Hmm.
living through the deconstruction, and
Yeah.
deconstructing a number of things, your faith,
Yes.
your marriage, but then putting them all back together, and
Right.
being in this really great place where you are now.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it is really good.
Awesome,
Yes,
awesome.
and yeah. So, I thought about, and then I thought maybe you would get to that in a minute, but I'm maybe jumping the gun. So, uh, the Buckeye Flame did an article
Hmm.
about Shelley and I and our mixed
Oh,
orientation marriage. I don't remember when it came out. It
okay.
was not long ago, like in the fall.
Of
But on my,
2025.
July 29th.
oh, is
I just
that
looked it
early?
up.
Yeah, well,
July.
we'll put a
So,
link in the
July
show
25th.
notes. Yeah, we'll put a link
okay,
in the show notes
and
for
my
everyone.
website has links to my own
Yep.
get podcasts I've been guests on and stuff. So I'm like, that would tell a little bit more, and my wife is part of that as well, and
Oh,
so you can read
wonderful.
her part of the story. So I just wanted to say that if people were interested, there's more to be learned about that.
That is amazing. And I'm so, I won't say happy. But it is great to hear that Shelley is also speaking and telling her part of
Yes,
the story, because I think that's
she's
really
mhm,
important to hear as
yeah,
well.
it is, and yes, and she's been on at least one podcast I know of, but that link is also on my website. So
All right. Well, shout out to Shelley. Thank you. Thank you for
yeah,
telling your story as well. All right. Well, Dale, we'll have to have you back on. I feel like there's a lot there for
okay,
us to uncover,
yes, we do.
about the open table, about deconstructing institutions and creating faith
Hmm.
spaces that are not constrained in ways that we
Hmm.
have felt constrained in the past. I think that's going to be a continuing conversation for us. But thank you so
Hmm.
much for joining us
Okay,
today and sharing so much
you're
about your
welcome.
life with us.
Thank
We
you for having me.
Wonderful. We are going to jump into our two segments. The first one is our query of the day. And yes, that is a pun. And so I'm going to ask Dale and Ben, and then I want our listeners, please engage with us, jump in, give us your answers to these questions. We've been talking about deconstructing the institution of the church. And Ben, I'm going to ask you, and then I'll send it over to Dale. If there's something about the institution of the church that you could deconstruct or just remove, like you get a genie in a bottle and I just get to remove this from the church, big C church, what would that thing be?
Ooh. Well, I grew up Roman Catholic.
Hmm.
So
You got a lot to choose
the
from.
thing I would want to, yes, yes. But and this might be stereotypical, but I would say Catholic guilt.
Okay.
That lingering sense of, and I recognize that what I call Catholic guilt exists in all parts of Christianity and probably all parts of religion. But that guilt, that shame that builds up, that you are not enough, that you have fallen somewhere short of what you're supposed to be as a person of faith, as a Catholic, as a Christian, as a whatever. Um, that would be totally what I would remove. And I think would, again, from my Catholic upbringing, would have helped many of us engage with the church in a more positive way, and particularly in a more positive way earlier on in our
Hmm.
lives than after significant amounts of counseling and deconstruction.
Love it. All right, Dale, is there anything? I mean, you've deconstructed, but what's the thing? If you had to point to one thing?
Well, I wrote it down,
Yeah,
and then Ben used the word shaming here's the way I put it: shaming theology.
yeah.
So it's I just don't buy into it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That we're all worms and terrible, and that there needed to be some sort of awful sacrifice, and that it's just bred into you. That whole thing about that God loves you, and then put sin in you originally, or it just is there, so that God can save you. But if you don't believe it, then God's going to destroy you in hell. And it's like, so that whole cyclical shaming theology is not part of who I am anymore, and I would just take that out.
Yeah.
And
I,
it creeps into lots of things when I'm
oh
back
yeah.
in those settings now.
Uh-huh.
The songs and prayers, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I did not know how much it is part of it.
It is. It
So,
is. I think my answer is similar to yours, but it's a little bit more specific. I would completely deconstruct the church's relationship with sex. Um, I
mhm,
just think that the church just has an awful relationship with sex and really the physical being. It goes back to being the sinful physical
mhm,
being, and therefore anything that is part of the physical body or manifest in a physical way has some shame or sin attached to it.
mhm,
And I think the
mhm.
church's really, if we could change the church's relationship with sex, oh my gosh, whoo, we could. You tear down a lot when you take down that one little peg, I think.
Mhm.
So we want to hear from you, listeners. Let us know if you could deconstruct any one piece of the church, what would that be and why? And what do you think would happen? What kind of liberation would folks experience by not having that be part of the church institution any longer? And then our second segment, we are going to jump right in with Ben, who is going to bring us our queer moment of the day, because we have always been here in our glorious, beautiful, God created beauty. And Ben is going to remind us of that today.
So today, rather than talk about a certain moment in queer Christian history, I want to focus on a certain icon or a certain depiction of a person from Christian history, and definitely queer expressions of that history as well. So there's what's known as the Rainbow Mary. Mary, the Mother of God, the Virgin Mary, is often depicted in church art, particularly in more liturgical traditions such as Anglicanism, the Episcopal Church, the Roman Catholic Church, Orthodoxy, etc. But Rainbow Mary are specific depictions of Mary, either taken from other depictions, earlier depictions, or completely new depictions, which typically include the rainbow flag, either in the halo, in the garments that Mary wears, or in other places of these depictions. And the idea is that the one person we can look to other than Jesus, who most often embodies this queer spirit, this transgressive spirit, in fact, is the one who, in the first book of Luke, actually goes to her also pregnant cousin, Elizabeth, and says, and talks about tearing down empires and tearing down kings and rulers and tyrants from their seat. And this character is obviously Mary. Now, Mary is often also looked to, particularly, in fact, by gay men, queer men, from many different traditions, particularly, again, the more liturgical Christian traditions. So, again, these depictions of quote unquote Rainbow Mary are a sense of who else would affirm us the most as LGBTQIA plus people than Jesus' mother. And I found a really interesting prayer titled Mary, Queer Liberator. And it says, Mary, our mother, we, your queer children, call on you. Help us to see ourselves as wholly good and made in God's image and likeness. Protect us from harm so that we may be safe from hatred and fear, especially for our other queer family, regardless of color or gender identity. Inspire our church to see the goodness of our lives and our love, and for our allies to advocate along with us. Liberate us from a world that sees us as inherently disordered, and into one where our lives and relationships are fully affirmed. And above all, convert us to your Son, that we may love with a heart like his, and work to see God's reign in our midst for all God's people. Amen. So again, we invoke the name of Mary. We invoke the name of a mother who, though a woman of her time, nevertheless transgressed empires and dominions and expectations of who she and who her son could be.
Thank you so much, Ben. And that brings us to the end of another amazing episode. We have to thank Dale once again for joining us. Dale, what would you like to share? Where can folks learn more about you? Give us the name of the podcast, the book, all of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So first of all of it is on DaleLykins.com. That is DALELYKINS.com. And my memoir is called Hush Child. And you can get it anywhere you buy books. If they don't have it, they would be able to order it. So go in and ask for it, or online, whatever. My podcast is Hear It From Me. Again, it's Spotify, Apple for sure. I think it's on other places too. And then you can tell that I don't do all of that. And then I have a blog that comes out. I write about once a week, and it is called The Unlearning Blog, and it's on Substack. Again, you can find the link to that page for it on my website as well. Just started a new book. I just started writing today. Seriously, my goal was to start writing it in January, and so I thought, okay, I have 10 days to start writing. And so it is going to be about my changing views of God throughout my life, from like earliest memory to now. So that I don't know anything more about it. I don't know a title or when it's coming out, because I just got the idea this summer and was like, that's what I want to write about. So just pay attention to that.
Yeah. Great. And we will definitely let folks know. We'll hear about it, and we'll make sure everybody else hears about it as well. Absolutely cannot wait. Well, thank you again to Dale. Thank you, Ben, for being an amazing co-host as always. And remember to like, subscribe, tell a friend, and then join us next week on Coming Out Christian.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We hope this conversation encouraged you, challenged you, and maybe just helped you feel a little less alone on your journey. If this podcast has been meaningful to you, would you consider supporting the work of Love Boldly? Love Boldly's mission is to create spaces where LGBTQIA+ people can flourish in Christianity, and your donation helps make conversations like this one possible. You can give at www.loveboldly.net/donate. That's www.loveboldly.net/donate. Want to stay connected with the podcast? Follow us on Instagram at comingoutchristian_podcast for updates, resources, and community. Until next time, remember that you can be queer and Christian and queer.